as well.
He said that I called him. I proved categorically I didn't. And you just waited for one piece of evidence and you said, oh, that'll do. Let me tell you something about this.
He corroborated.
Let me just tell you this here. The pecuniary interest that you alleged was that if I had have won, I would have been the MP. Totally false. It would have been a by-election. No pecuniary interest. But Nick Smith did everything I did, and no one's investigating him.
I think beyond the technicalities, there's another issue.
Very quickly, when
I learnt about this donation, I immediately put out a press statement and then told the Prime Minister. That's the fact.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. We'll be back with the panel straight after the break.
Young, drunk, out of control. Kiwi kids starting early.
I started drinking when I was 10.
And paying the ultimate price.
They brought in unconscious, 16, sometimes 14-year-olds. And what can you do? You can't do anything.
Then...
Britain's hoping to attract millions to the 2012 Olympics, and this is the site that they'll be met with.
Best-selling author Bill Bryson uncovers the UK's dirty secret.
We should be ashamed of the mess.
This is just crap.
Where there's a story, we'll find it. Sunday tonight, 7:30, TV1.
Kia ora, welcome back to Eye to Eye. Protect and save your New Zealand. That's the campaign message from New Zealand First, because according to them, the world has become a very scary place. And not because of any battle in a far-off land. The fight is raging in the money markets, the banking systems, the housing markets, the investment companies, and the vultures are gathering to pick over the corpses of the casualties. So who are the casualties? Or is this a slogan based on fear-mongering rather than fact? We'll come back to the fear-mongering question a little bit later, but just continuing with the Serious Fraud Office inquiry and the clearance. You do not accept it as a clearance, do you, Matthew?
Well, it says in the headline of the press statement it's not a clearance.
Right.
In fact, what the Serious Fraud Office has done is uncovered law-breaking, in their view, by Winston Peters and New Zealand First, and so he's been referred to the police and the Electoral Commission,
do you want a lawyer's
and those processes will play out.
Do you want a lawyer's point of view?
Yes.
They say there is no cause for any investigation into fraud. That's number one.
Right.
And that was the big allegation.
That's because the money. You see, that's because the money.
You just hold it. Contain yourself, Matthew. You're not on a fascist right-wing program here. This is called Eye to Eye.
Right.
And it means that you have to keep quiet when somebody else is talking, particularly given how junior you are. Now, can I just say this here?
You're an old man, I know.
Can I just say this here?
Yes.
The second thing is they say that there's a connection with the Electoral Law, but I'm sorry, that's for the Electoral Commission, and we have talked to the Electoral Commission and filed the documentation. Then he mentions the police. Well, we've met the police as well. Now, see, you just cannot have this person going on this 4 weeks ago in the campaign, and he wants to repeat this malicious, slanderous, libelous type of statement.
Let's be fair here.
Because he wants the National Party to win.
No, Winston,
you do want the National Party to win, though, don't you?
I want to be rid of Helen Clark. I want to be rid of Helen Clark,
But can I say this to you? Guy and Espen has said, and Barry might say it too, on TV1, and he's been a big critic of Winston. This has put Winston right back in the race.
Well, I think
that's what Guy and Espen have said.
Well, I think Guy must not have read what the Serious Fraud Office had to say carefully enough, because what they've done is they have uncovered what they believe to be sufficient evidence. Don't interrupt me, Winston.
What
they've uncovered...
Can I say something?
No,
what the Serious Fraud Office said on Friday was they have uncovered sufficient evidence of wrongdoing that they have referred Winston Peters and his party to the police, the Serious Fraud Office and the Auditor General. It's a very unusual thing for a minister in a government.
What are they going to say when they've been trundling around there for 2 months?
This is like a stuck record.
Well,
I've got a long history with the Serious Fraud Office and pointing out their incompetence. But let me just say something about here. I thought I was coming on a program with independent, neutral media commentators who are from the fourth estate and tell the truth without fear of failing. What I've got here is one guy saying he doesn't give a damn about the fairness of the debate. He wants National to win.
Why don't we leave it?
Because what's he doing on the program?
I mean,
we're going to accuse him
about that. Everyone knows where I come from.
Can I just pick up Dougie on one thing that he said earlier on? He said that he resigned, quite true, just after the 2005 election. Well, he resigned. He didn't mention because he was annoyed at Winston taking a seat in a government that he said that he wasn't going to 2 weeks out from the last election.
No.
Now, have you two kissed and made up? And
we never had a separation.
You did?
And I didn't. No, we did not. and I never talked to anybody.
So do you trust him now? Do you trust him now?
Do you trust Winston,
I have
your leader?
always trusted him. Absolutely trust him now.
I want him to change it a little bit here. I think we've had a good crack over this.
Can I just say one thing? He and I were senior members of the National Party Dominion Council 30 years ago. We've always been friends. We left the National Party because we believe in principles.
Until he had a falling out after the 2005
No, that's not true.
He did. I talked to him
That's not good. We have never had a falling out.
Just admit to it. It's a document of fact.
That's not your show.
Look, he and I are telling you...
This is not your show. Shush up, Barry. Let's talk a bit of finance.
It's okay to fall out, you know?
Well, you would know, because you're falling out with a few of them. Let's go. Look, I want to talk. Let's talk about some finance. The current climate and the huge debt has stymied National's tax policy, hasn't it?
Yeah, well...
Hasn't it?
Well, the books were far worse than anyone expected. Right. $30 billion borrowing over the next 5 years. I mean, I think Winston probably has some insightful things to say about this. He's a former Treasurer of New Zealand, former Foreign Minister. I'd be really interested in his perspective on the international financial crisis.
Can I just come to you? Given the climate, can you reduce GST from 12.5 to 10%?
Most certainly, it'll be
10%?
It'll be anti-inflationary, which is one of the reasons why the governor of the Reserve Banks has got almost the highest interest rates in the OECD. And all around this country, people have had up to a third of their home value, that's all their savings and equity in their homes, lost because the Reserve Bank governor. This is the most critical thing at the moment, where people are losing hundreds, $200,000, $300,000 on their home value because of an artificially high interest rate that the governor of the Reserve Bank is setting.
So just very quickly, as a former Foreign Minister and Treasurer, what's your plan?
Can I finish here? Meanwhile, his mate John Key and the Labour Party are arguing about the rats and mice of $15 for tax cuts per week.
So what's your plan?
And somebody's losing $200,000 in their home.
Well, because that's the point. Well, Matthew, let's have a look at that. I mean, he's got a point there, really, hasn't he? I mean,
but does he have a point that actually you take those measures now,
right?
When, to me, it's a bit like Michael Cullen and Bill English playing poker with a cards face down and bidding on the cards because, hang on, nobody knows what hand they're being dealt with. We don't know what's going to happen internationally.
Doug, you come to this. Are there casualties in this?
Can I answer to Barry? Barry, you've got a point there. The fact is, you'd think that the National Party and the Labour Party would get together and try and resolve this issue.
Given the crisis.
Because people have lost so much equity in their homes and there's so many jobs lost in the industry, there's a serious lack of confidence.
So again, as a former Deputy Prime Minister, former Treasurer, former Foreign Minister, you must have unique insights into how the international finance sector works.
Okay.
What's your plan?
Well, thank you for thanks for the question.
I have one unique insight, and it's this: there is nowhere in the world where a Reserve Bank is operating like New Zealand. That's my first insight, which you don't accept.
Is it a good idea of Bollard's to hold off on interest rate cuts?
No, it's not a good idea. Look, the Australian Reserve Bank governor has already moved. The chairman of the Fed and most other parts of the world has moved. And here we got, he is sitting on our hands.
He'll move.
While people are losing massive amounts of money. And there's a huge lack of confidence and the marketplace is in disarray.
So why didn't
we should have moved a long time ago.
When you were Treasurer?
And every quarter, I have argued for that. And when I was the Treasurer of...
Why didn't you reform the Reserve Bank?
When I was the Treasurer...
OK, now that's a fair question.
Well, let me answer him. Because he said he's asked it twice.
OK. Why didn't you reform
the official cash rate was changed in November of 1996. The governor of the Reserve Bank decided to ignore it. He decided to ignore the policy targets agreement, rather. Totally ignore it. We wanted balance rather than just a shrewd instrument saying inflation is the way that we're going to have inflation will be dealt with by interest rates.
Why didn't you do this?
And I made a change to the policy targets agreement. And, you know, Cullen did the same in 1999 as well. And they ignored him.
Has John Key
the act has to be changed.
Is John Key the right person?
Well, you've had an opportunity.
Would the National Party have let you do it?
Why haven't you done it?
Is Key the right person for the financial crisis right now, Matthew?
Well,
given his background.
We've heard Winston's unique insights into the global financial crisis. I think that there's probably no one in the New Zealand Parliament who understands international financial markets as well as him.
Even though some would say he's probably the worst person, given what's happened in America.
He says that,
No, Helen Clark said that the other day.
Well, there's no point really in blaming, as they have done, John Key on the failure of Merrill Lynch. For God's sake, he worked there
all the worst free marketers in the world.
And likewise, there is no use holding John Key up as the saviour of this because he worked for Merrill Lynch either.
No.
OK, we'll leave it there. We'll be back with the panel straight after the break.
You ever held a gun? It's like the rush you get from a rock from a smack. It just goes in your arm, up in your head, and down in your arm. That's gun rush. Gun rush. I didn't think it was possible to feel like this. To feel this angry.
Kia ora, welcome back to Eye to Eye. So after all the Winston bashing and media slanging's been said and done, what's New Zealand First got to offer? That's what all Kiwis want to know. And if the media gives the party a fair shot, they'd be surprised at how good some of their policies are.